So Vice sat down recently and had an interview with President Obama, and of course the Vice audience had sent in questions, and one of the most asked questions, the number one question asked President Obama, was, what do you think about legalizing marijuana? Now, President Obama had an answer that I'm not too pleased with, and I'm going to read it here. He said, quote, "First of all, it shouldn't be young people's biggest priority. Let's put it in perspective. Young people, I understand why this is important to you, but you should be thinking about climate change, the economy, jobs, war and peace. Maybe way at the bottom, you should be thinking about marijuana." Now, I agree and disagree with him. And I disagree with him more than I agree. I agree that these other issues are important. Climate change, especially the economy, jobs, etc., war and peace. However, I really think these are linked to the war on drugs, legalization of marijuana being a significant part of that, and a significant step on ending the war on drugs. You see, the war on drugs has caused a lot of problems, especially domestically. We talk about Ferguson, for example, and that's just one example of cops using drug laws and over-militarization to make money for the state. And not only that, but the economy is affected greatly by the spending we do to not only house mostly African Americans in prisons for drug-related crimes, but also the militarization, the spending on police in order to carry out the arrests and this war on drugs. So that's a big part of the economy. For example, we look at Colorado, who recently legalized marijuana, recreational, medicinal, whatever, and they're raking in a lot of money, and they're directing it towards education. However, Kansas, who maintains a strict ban on marijuana and medical marijuana, for example, has a huge budget hole. Now, a lot of that is from Brownback giving tax cuts to the rich. However, also, he's spending money on, of course, enforcing this war on drugs. You could eliminate that budget hole in part by legalizing marijuana and regulating it and taxing it. They don't do that. So, big part of the economy. War and peace. Now, Mexico has a big problem with drug cartels, right? Well, you take the power out of the drug cartels when you legalize marijuana. When you legalize drugs, you no longer have a black market. So that's a big thing. Climate change, well, there are ideas out there for using hemp as a source of fuel. I'm not sure how efficacious that is, how well that would work, but that would be an alternative to help slow down climate change and switch to a different fuel. You switch to using hemp-derived fuels and hemp-derived paper and other hemp products. That would also at least do a little bit to mitigate climate change if we were to go over and climate destruction if we were to over and use that. So marijuana is actually a big deal, and it involves a lot of different things. And here's another thing that he says, quote, "I'd separate out the issue of decriminalization of marijuana from encouraging its use. I always say to folks, legalization or decriminalization is not a panacea." No, that is correct. It wouldn't solve all issues, but it would help. But he asks, and this is what gets me, do you feel the same way about meth? Do you feel the same way about coke? How about crack? How about heroin? There is a legitimate, I think, concern about the overall effects this has on society, particularly vulnerable parts of our society. Now, I think that is an equivocation. President Obama is equivocating marijuana to cocaine, to crack, to heroin, all drugs that show very little positive impacts on society and health, whereas marijuana has been shown to have some positive medicinal effects. So you can't really equivocate all of that. But nonetheless, Obama does admit that if enough states do end up decriminalizing, which hopefully statewide initiatives, and there are a lot, that are pushing for decriminalization, Congress may then reschedule, which is what they should be doing. If you want people to focus on a different issue, my advice to President Obama is just legalize it already, decriminalize it, kick it off the schedule, and move on. You want young people to focus on more, in your words, more important issues, and I don't disagree that they are important. I think they're very, very important. I think climate change is one of the most important things. So why don't we get this one out of the way, this relatively minor issue, kick it out of the way, and then have younger people focus on doing something about the other things. That's my advice. Take it or leave it, Obama.